Welcome to Travel Around the Block. Join Joel, Mike, and their guests as they explore how Web3 and AI are reshaping the way we journey, invest, and connect across the globe. This episode is sponsored by Lumo. Powered by AI, Lumo makes it possible for travelers and travel managers to predict, avoid, and manage flight disruptions. Visit thinklumo.com.
And welcome back to Travel Around the Block, where we dive deep with trailblazers shaping the future of travel and technology. We're your hosts, Joel and Mike, and today we have an incredible guest whose vision is redefining the way we explore the world. Joining us is Gee Mann, the dynamic founder and CEO of TravlrID, a groundbreaking platform that's simplifying travel, empowering explorers, and connecting communities across the globe. With a passion for innovation and a relentless drive to solve the real challenges travelers face, Gee has turned TravlrID into a game changer for seamless, secure, and smarter journeys. In this episode, we'll hear about Gee's entrepreneurial journey, the inspiration behind TravlrID, and his insights into the future of travel tech. So buckle up, get ready for some serious travel inspiration, and let's welcome Gee Mann to the show. Great to have you here.
To the show, Gee. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this. So thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Absolute pleasure. And Gee, before we get too deep into travel tech details, we'd love to start at a kind of high level and learn a little bit more about you. And I think our audience will be really excited to do so as well. So if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey and background?
Where do I start? So it's a story of its own. So I'm an entrepreneur from the UK, born and raised here. My family originally from Punjab, and we're Sikh, and Sikhs by nature are hustlers. So that's probably where my entrepreneurial energy comes from. But we also believe in service to others. So my strong sense of service to others comes from my roots, really. So that comes from, which naturally fits into hospitality and travel, because that's about serving others. So you start to see some dots aligning of why I travel. So my career kind of has spanned across consulting, engineering, travel technology. I've got a very wide career. And I think my first journey into entrepreneurship was when I had my first child at 17. So that was my first startup. So trying to understand there's no product market fit there. There's no MVP. That is your first product you got to work out on the fly. I think that's where I figured out my resilience and I figured out how to get on with life, except a lot of closed doors and a lot of no's, but you just got to get on with it. So that was probably my first journey into growing up and growing up fast. I then moved swiftly into the long, illustrious engineering career. So that's where my corporate hat comes from, doing projects for people like BP and Shell, large oil and gas projects, larger remote teams, big budgets. Long before there was this thing about remote teams, they were offshoring, now we call it remote teams. Nothing today is new to me in the terms of I'm used to running big teams because that's what I used to do in my corporate career, which I'm very grateful for. But in parallel, I run an events management company, which I got an exit with. I sold my events management company. And then swiftly that moved me on to, okay, what do I do next? And I found a great opportunity across events, technology, my engineering technical background. Where do I go next? And I saw a niche for how do you book meetings and events in real time. And at the time, there was no solution in the market for you to book meetings and events in real time. So I took off my engineering hat and put on a technology app. Same thing, pipes, oil and gas, switched the pipes to data pipelines. And now I was transferring data as opposed to oil and gas. The principles were still the same, managing the teams was still the same. Everything was the same. So that was a fascinating journey to go onto that journey. And we built out the first meetings reservation system. Long story short, with that business, COVID killed any travel technology that was trying to do anything at that time. So that hurt, put a lot of money into that, put a lot of sweat and tears, made a lot of mistakes first time founder. I then went on to do some consulting around blockchain, and then all the dots are going to start to connect quite nicely shortly. So then I started doing something around with the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, about how can you share employee data about my COVID status with your employers securely. So I started getting into blockchain consulting. Eventually that all became a norm and that technology was rolled out and the rest is history. And then I was very fortunate to meet my co-founder who I built an AI business with. And the business was Gaurav Gandhi. He's a doctor, PhD. And so I was not techie in that scenario. He had come back from a background from chaos theory and how neural networks work. So a whole load of AI. And I'm very grateful for him. He's been a great teacher and mentor when it comes to AI. So we were doing ChatGPT, pre-ChatGPT, and it was called a question and answer as a service. It makes sense now, but it didn't make sense then when we said to folks, talk to your data. And now it makes absolute sense. But again, another innovation we just simply couldn't monetize at the level $20 a month for a subscription versus what we were charging six figures for was just no longer a viable business. You just can't compete with a SaaS subscription of $20. So I've been involved in emerging tech for quite some time, which now if you collect blockchain and you connect AI and then you connect travel tech for a decade, I think you magically realize why I started to get into where I am today, because there's all those dots that could perfectly align with what I'm doing today.
That's an amazing journey, Gee, and I think that puts you in pretty rare air in terms of people who have touched all those worlds quite that deeply. So we're very fortunate to have you and appreciate it. It's implied a little bit by your background, but I'll dare to ask you anyway. How did you still could have solved anything in the world? So how did you pick what you're going to solve at TravlrID? How did you focus on that?
So when I was building the meetings reservation system, I saw the state of how profiles were coming in. Group bookings still, even today, I don't think it's fully solved, but we were doing group bookings for profile. We were doing group bookings then, which requires profiles. And every profile had its own sets of challenges, dietary needs, and for this conference for 50 people, how do you handle those needs of those bookers? They weren't finding their way into the booking system because the data wasn't flowing from source in the correct way. So I saw the problem with property management systems on the hotel side, central reservation systems, and how they were handling that, and how data was getting lost quite easily. And it can come through different sources. So my first flavor of profiles is really broken came from there. And I thought, I wish there was a way to make that portable and accessible. And only then we can make personalization. And which was just a thought at that time. And then the more I try to peel that back, I started to see actually there's billions spent when it comes to distribution today. There is billions of transactions, billions of profiles that happen when it comes to making bookings and loyalty programs, all these things, everything's associated to a profile. You make a payment, that's a profile. You log into Google to join a Google Meet, that's a profile. Everything requires a profile. So I got laser focused on, but how do we solve that for travel? Because travel is more than just my first name and my surname and an email address. It's much more than that. So that's where the journey came from. It came from a previous startup where I could see profiles were actually really broken.
So having kind of focused on that area, can you tell us a little bit about TravlrID and what angle it takes on that problem? There are probably folks listening who have been thinking about traveler profiles for longer than they care to admit. And I have a hunch that the way you're looking at it might differ a little bit from how the industry has historically thought about it. So can you tell us a little bit about TravlrID?
How much time do we have? This is going to be a little much longer. TravlrID I see as an infrastructure. There is a lack for a contextual profile in an AI world. My preferences and my profile can change dynamically based on me being a business traveler or me traveling with my family. I've just had a cataracts operation, so I'm temporarily blind or I'm permanently blind. Those are completely different contexts. And how you cater for someone that's temporarily blind and someone that's permanently blind are completely two different things. And if you've never been there, then you won't know, right? One is used to handling the blindness, the other one is not. So how do you handle these sort of dynamic and real-time scenarios? And in an AI world, we're talking about personalization. How do you then present that contextual data on the individual? So profiles today, in my view, are very static. They are, what is your meal preference, your first name, your last name, your date of birth. There's a whole lot of attributes that every profile system today is storing pretty much the same. And they load them into the GDS. And by the time they get to the hotel, they say, Joel, I've got Joel H, what's your surname? And you end up preloading, reloading, or attaching your loyalty, and then finally something magically clicks. It's very broken. My view is profile data should go way beyond that, and it should be including things such as my accessibility needs. It should be able to include cultural nuances. I may have an Eastern name versus a Western name. I might be a confident flyer, I might be a nervous flyer, I might like to stay on the second floor versus a room facing the train tracks. All these different nuances, where do they sit today in a profile? They simply don't. So you need this rich contextual data that follows G everywhere G goes. And G should be able to give permission and consent based on the service provider I'm working with. There is no infrastructure in the world, we believe, that does that today. And that's where TravlrID comes. We built an infrastructure that allows other companies to build profile stacks with this multi-profile perspective. So I get quite technical, and I hope that's making some sense of what a core infrastructure we're doing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I was just going to say, Gee, the TravlrID and what you guys are doing resonates with me a lot because of the fact that I've been in the hospitality operations and the property management system world for quite a number of years in my past life. And one of the things that you recognize is that when you got to make a reservation, build a profile for them, right? But it could be a leisure profile, it could be a business profile. And depending on if they're booking through a corporate rate code, then pulling their business profile in. But then there's a fragmentation of the profile from that perspective, right? A business versus a leisure profile. But if you go beyond that in terms of overall travel, you definitely have major fragmentation between your profile at, let's say, United Airlines versus your profile at Hilton versus your profile at an OTA or an Airbnb, et cetera. They're all over the place. But at the same time, you have no control of the data that they gather on you. It's not like you can say, here's my overall travel profile on my hotel preference, my air preference, on my food preference, on my merchandising preference, etc. And based on the supplier, I can choose what I want to share. So I have full control and ownership. And years ago, I think I was talking about how that is the missing piece for the industry when they talk about hyper personalization, because you can't really, you're basically, from a supplier perspective, you're kind of working with one hand tied behind your back, because you only have the profile, the data of what that individual traveler shared with you, but you don't have the full picture of what they like to eat, how they like to fly, what kind of experience they enjoy, etc. So I think this is one of the things that's really going to hopefully move the needle for the industry in terms of being able to really see that traveler and really do hyper personalization and customization. And I think there's going to be a major play on that in terms of having like a dedicated travel agent AI for individuals, right? So I kind of want to take a step back and just make sure we have a baseline as well. If you could talk a little bit from your perspective, what an AI agent is in the frame of a travel world, and how Web3 technologies like blockchain or smart contract, what they are and how they can be applied. So overall, if you take like the technology of AI, Web3, decentralized digital ID, if you put that all together in your mind, like how is that going to fit together and move the needle for both travelers and also for travel suppliers?
So if I take the AI agents first, because they are basically just autonomous pieces of software that are programmed to talk to each other. I wouldn't say RPA. People used to say robotic processes. This is a little bit beyond that. So this is something you can give a task and it will go do it for you, and it will do it autonomously for you. So if you ask it to go book a trip with some parameters, it will go off and it will make a booking for you and it will come back. So an AI agent is basically a programmable piece of software that autonomously do something on your behalf. That's all it is. Web3, on the other hand, is about decentralization and ownership. So this is about, there's no central authority, and I am in control of what is mine. And that can be anything. It could be cryptocurrency, it could be data, it could be anything. But the whole principle of it is self-sovereignty. It's about the individual. And then you touched on the last part, which is about decentralized identity. And I always find this one an interesting one. So decentralized identity is more around, see, when we talk about identity, TravlrID, people folks think we're in the decentralized identity business, which is what governments are into. We are in the profile business. So identity is who you are, which a government will give you an identity to say you are a citizen of X. And then that document will tell you your date of birth and where you were born and where, et cetera. Whereas a profile is what your needs are. So I want to make sure we distinguish in the TravlrID world, just that we don't get, because I do find,
that's a really good clarification. I appreciate that, because sometimes you kind of commingle the concept of a profile and digital ID. So that's a really great distinction between the two.
And the decentralized identity is your way of relaying information. I want to relay that I am a citizen of the UK without relying on a central authority to prove that I am a citizen of the UK. And decentralized identity means I am able to do that through a DID, so a decentralized identity. So if you merge all three of those concepts together, is where TravlrID is basically born. We need a world for AI agents that have context. You need to have some level of ownership, Web3, of the data for the individual. And then you have elements of verified data within that infrastructure that says, how can I trust the data that's being shared with me is accurate? And you do need an element of decentralized identity. So stitch that all together again, and the baby's born, which is TravlrID.
Okay, I have a follow-up question, because now it just racked my mind, because we're talking about identifications for, let's say, AI agents, right? Yes. So in the current world, or in the past, if you're a human travel agent, you have to get an IATA number, right? To authenticate and validate and prove that you are a travel agent, you can book this trip on behalf of Joel, etc. Are we moving into a world where potentially AI travel agents are also going to have some type of designated digital ID, a number like an IATA number for AI agents so that they can book your trip for you?
I love that, Mike. I put a post up just studying this last week for the same thing.
Perfect. I'm glad I asked you that then. And I'm sorry, where's that? Is that a Medium post or a LinkedIn post?
It's on LinkedIn. Yeah, it's on LinkedIn. I said, imagine in a world, Gee decides to set up an agency, and I'm a solo founder. I'm not going to hire anyone. I'm going to employ AI agents to just issue tickets on my behalf. So would I get an IATA number for the agent, and the agent can now do bookings on my behalf? So I think the concept of a agent with an IATA number, it will happen eventually, without a doubt. Now, are we anywhere near that? That's what do you do when it gets it wrong? Who pays for the refund? This is the blog that I talk about what about when AI goes wrong, right? What about when it's not issuing the ticket, when it's taking the payment? So there's all sorts of nuances around enterprise rails you have to put on these big deployments before you do them. But 100%, I do see a world where I'm a sci-fi nerd. So, if you want to talk about sci-fi stuff, this is where I get a lot of my inspiration from. You watch Minority Report and you watch some of those kind of sci-fi geeky films.
Oh my goodness.
Right. If you look, I'm a Star Wars, Star Trek, anything Star, I'm a Star Wars fan.
I'm gonna blow your mind real quick, Gee. I'm gonna digress a little bit because you brought it up. But you brought up the movie Minority Report. And I would just say I was an extra in Minority Report.
No way.
So years ago in my past life, I was an assistant front office manager at the Willard Intercontinental, which is right next to the White House in Washington, D.C. And the cast and crew stayed at the Willard. Actually, they filmed a portion of the movie at the Willard Hotel. If you go back and rewind to the tail end of the movie where they're in this fine dining facility and they're chasing the chief up to the roof before, it's a movie, so I'm not giving anything away, but before he does himself. That is the Willard's fine dining restaurant. And funny story was, I was checking in the casting director and she's like, we need extras. And I think they were offering like $16 an hour or something like that, which I really didn't care. I'm just like, raise my hand, tell the entire front office team, hey, they need extras. So the following weekend, I go to Georgetown where they set up the extras to go through makeup and costume. I shit you not. I'm wearing a full Prada suit. I'm like, can I keep this? But yeah, long story short, they had us staged at a nearby church and then called us out. And I'm basically wearing a Prada suit with my co-extra. And we're basically pedestrians walking up and down Georgetown in front of the Gap store. And when the movie comes out, tell all my friends, hey, I'm in this movie. I'm an extra. Let's go watch it. And of course, I'm like a reflection off of a car. You could barely tell. But it was really fun. But I agree with you. Like for me, I love, like when I was younger, I loved sci-fi, the Star Treks and Star Wars. And I'm always like, by the year 2025, we're going to have flying cars and Back to the Future, flying hoverboards, etc. And we're going to have these machines that's going to print food from a microwave, and the technology is going to come. It hasn't come as fast as I'd like it, but it is definitely getting there closer and closer. I mean, the iPhone was definitely one of those moments where I'm like, oh my God, we're moving towards the future, right? So even with AI agents, in my mind, I'm hoping sooner rather than later, we're all going to be able to experience like personal travel agents, personal agents for accounting, etc. So for us, that really, we love travel as travelers, but we also love to innovate in travel. For me, I would love to hear your perspective on where the industry is, because in the last few years, we talk about digital transformation, operational efficiencies, and so forth. But now the conversation has dramatically shifted to AI transformation almost, right? Mm-hmm. So if we take a lot of lessons learned from the past where travel companies, they weren't ready to go into digital transformation because of anything from, let's say, their data structure needs to be cleaned up, right? Bad data in, bad data out type of thing. Where do you think travel is overall? And feel free to get granular if you like to focus on the hospitality side versus the air side. But overall, where do you think the travel companies are in terms of AI adoption and transformation?
So I'll take a wider view on this. We started talking about sci-fi and movies. So I read a lot of books around the universe, space exploration. I'm a big fan of Brian Cox, The Big Bang Theory. And then I look at some of the discovery that we're doing when it comes to interplanetary, right? Just to give you how they in physics had to rethink, unlearn and learn concepts based on the sun being at the center of our universe. And a lot of the advantage for me, I feel as an entrepreneur, is I picked up multiple sector experience and I've got these transferable skills, which gives me, it's a way of connecting dots in places where I've got a different diverse set of thought process. And the ability to unlearn and learn, I think, is one of my superpowers. Now, when you ask me where you are in the industry of the travel, it's $1 trillion industry. Everyone knows this. Everyone knows there's $1.4 trillion opportunity if you can do something fantastic in travel. Will there be an AI model to rule all travel? Probably not. It's never going to happen. It's never going to be one model. It's going to be swarms of AIs that are doing multiple things. A bit like the Minority Report. Personalized offers as I'm walking through the supermarket, the screens are changing just for me on my lens, and it's perfect for me. It's saying, hey, Gee, your Hugo Boss is about to run out. Run into the Hugo Boss, they're going to give you 30% off. They will be able to do that hyper-personalization, right? And this personalization scenarios came from Target. Target are the ones, the first that would go, hey, we know when they first started doing viral marketing and trying to do personalization, they knew that you want to buy, I don't know, X product, but they'll send you offers for 3 other products and hide the 4th one in the mix of it. This is, Amazon, everyone does this at scale today, but they know you want to buy the 4th product. They're just not going to tell you that we know that you want to buy that 4th product. We're just going to kind of hide it amongst offers of, hey, that's a good deal to do. So personalization is nothing new. Digital transformation is nothing new. I think what's changing is that the folks and the mindsets are changing finally. I've sat in HTMG, the Hotel Technology, or the Hedner distribution groups of how they would think about technology as a perspective. And I think, I'm sorry to say this, a lot of the older hat thinking is retiring because we do need that new mindsets coming through. So I think we are not only just at a digital transformational period, but we're also at a period where from the older hats are retiring and we're getting some more forward-thinking people moving into our industry. I think travel is the most ripe industry to be disrupted because we have so much legacy in our technology and industry. And then we talked about AI agents and the role they play. Well, yes, once upon a time, rubbish in is rubbish out, but an AI agent can talk to unstructured data and it can then make it structured. So if someone said to me today that you're a massive ERP system and I have to build a connector to you and it's going to cost me 30K and it's going to take 6 months to do that integration, that's the problem we have with this industry. There are technologies that take too long to integrate and the integrations are completely versioned, whereas an AI agent can pick up that API and go, well, I'll build the integration in less than 5 minutes. So that mindset shift of it can be unstructured and structured, and I can move digital transformation within days and weeks, is still yet to find its way into travel. It's getting there at the board level, but they don't know how to deploy it. That's the other problem. So the opportunity is huge, and I think travel is the most fascinating industry to do. I think we'll see the most. Fintech's already seen it. The fintech industry has so many fintech products. We've seen crypto world, we've seen CBDC, we've seen so many different technologies, different concepts, different products, real world assets. Fintech's there, right? It's right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Travel is just getting started. And I think that's so exciting. But I think there is huge space to human capital, money, people, should I say, people and money needs to be invested in the right places.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. It reminded me of around this time last year, I went to a Ethereum conference in Zug, Switzerland, and we were talking about Web3 and travel. I was talking more about leveraging Web3 technology for travel as a major use case beyond DeFi, beyond RWA, beyond disruption in the traditional finance. And everybody, as soon as you mention it, everybody, oh my God, to the normies, if you will, it just makes sense because they kind of recognize that. But for us, that's been industry, especially on the hospitality side, going back to what you said about there's so many different fragmented and siloed database and systems. And then on top of that, there's so much legacy piping for all the integration that's required. I remember when I was doing property management system integration work, typical 4-star hotel, you're talking about 30 or plus different systems, everything from movie system, internet, credit card, key system, etc. And they all need to communicate. So that's where a lot of the unstructured and structured data that really needs to happen. So if you apply that to what TravlrID is focused on solving, how do you see that being how do you penetrate a market more or less, right? I'm trying to understand better, like, do you need, like, say, for example, you mentioned HTNG. Do you need like these type of bodies to create standardization in order for hospitality suppliers to adopt? Or is this something that hospitality supplier can say, like, I see a really good use case. I really want to be able to hyper personalize for my guests. We have an overarching chain with multiple brands. You know, you want to make sure you collect profiles for every single one, or even having relationships with OTAs. I know this is probably not something that they like because it's kind of like a marriage in hell. You know, in terms like they need the distribution, but they don't want to share all that data across the board to the original supplier. So I'm just really curious, how do you see the adoption of a TravlrID profile?
So I think that's super fascinating. So there's a lot of things to unpack there. So first one is standardization. I think that's a very important thing. From an agent to agent, Google released a protocol that allows standardization of how agents talk to each other. So there are folks doing the technology part. But then there comes the profile layer that you mentioned. So I'm very proud that the Decentralized Identity Foundation have a profile standard, spec standard that we were an open contributor to. We don't believe TravlrID should own that standard. We should be a global standard from somebody else. At the moment we try and enforce a standard from TravlrID, then you're locked into a partner again, which is against our DNA, right? We have an open source mindset. So we were fully behind what Decentralized Identity Foundation, where we were an active contributor very early on. That journey probably started a year and a half back off. And those standards are published and the schema is being published. So that's one to watch for everyone. But that's only around personal profile preferences standardization. So, you know, and all the things we talked about the individual, but an infrastructure needs to be context aware, and which is what you talked about OTAs, right? So let's talk through a use case. So in TravlrID's world, you need a standard protocol built on standards. Well, that's where Decentralized Identity Foundation's schema standard comes in. So everyone now knows how to accept preferences. So if you are a property management system and I tell you the dietary requirements, they need to find its way through the PMS into the F&B module and say, you'll make sure you pop it in the right places, but that's going to be transmitted in the right way across the ecosystem. So it has to be standardized so the technology suppliers can accept these profiles. So we're not trying to be proprietary here. We're trying to make sure that we're adopting and pushing global standards, and we will continue to do so. Then comes the OTA one, and that's an interesting one because I'm a big advocate for AI. And when we say AI, we have to remember AI is not just text, it's vision, it's voice, it's multiple levels. But today, there are different AI models that there's many that can actually go and do functions for you in an agentic world. And what they do, some of them are doing, they're actually opening up in a web browser and then they're scrolling through and trying to do whatever they do for you, trying to book stuff for you. I'm a firm believer that's just a temporary fix. That is, we won't need vision learning for that purpose. We do need vision, but not for that purpose. An AI agent will just talk to another AI agent. Now, what does that do when it comes to discovery? I'm bypassing all the AdWords, all the SEO optimized words, and I'm going directly to, I don't know, and I'm going to do that discovery. And the part that foundationally, that's very important, that there is a foundation of those profiles to talk to each other in a compliant, secure fashion. And that's where TravlrID is the foundation, that we're working to the specs and standards that's globally understood. But we have a protocol for that exchange that everyone owns their data. Marriott owns their data, Mike owns his data, and everything in between is it's secure against standards. So it's important. There are a lot of complexities to what we do. I'm trying to simplify it. But I feel that there will be a point where if you are an intermediate of some fashion, you may have to revisit your business model, because if it's only on search and discovery and booking, you may be in a position of disruption.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
that brings up, for me, an interesting question, which is how I kind of believe that the software between our ears is probably the most important software in the world. And there are a lot of leaders looking at life through a certain lens. And a lot of what you're saying will sound relatively orthogonal to their normal way of thinking or typical habits of thought. And whether it's AI or Web3 or just the level of imagination that you're bringing, I think today's episode of Travel Around the Block feels a little bit more like travel around the universe based on how expansive your vision is. And so I'm just wondering, from the point of view of the software between the ears, is there anything you could share that you think is an analogy that kind of starts to unlock in the mind, what is the Web3 ethos, or what is the way of looking at things that might be kind of a bridge from where they are to sort of how you see the world? Because I almost feel like there's a foundation piece mentally that is sort of an unlocked door. And I wonder if you could comment on that.
So I think a simpler way of putting it, I think Google login is such a great analogy of what, there's two analogies that I use depending on the audience. So one is someone needs to build what Swift payments network is to the payments industry. It's Rails for globally organized way to send payments globally. Swift allows you to send a payment and it's a network. Money is not stored in Swift, it's simply for transacting, right? There's no money being stored in Swift. It transacts money in through a global network and it sends it to its destination. That's what TravlrID does. We're not in the business of storing data. We're not in the business of building insights on Joel or Mike. The idea is there's a network that allows secure private data to be shared amongst peers. And that's what we do at a foundational level. But what that means to a traveler is what you're saying, Joel. What do you find that makes sense from an infrastructure? No one buys infrastructure. No one buys Swift network. You don't purchase that as a product. It's not a product for someone to use. It's something you build on or integrate into. And that's what TravlrID is. And that's why sometimes it's a hard sell of what we do. What does it mean to a traveler? So ultimately, it was almost like a Google login, right? For example, I have a profile today I can log into a Google Meet and have a conversation with anyone, and I can change the settings on my screens, and I can do whatever I want to do with that Google login. I can also then log into my email with the same Google login. I can log into other products with that same login, and that goes with me, and I'm in control. I can open and close that account as I wish, but it goes with me everywhere I go. That Google login per se. Now, that's great from a login in perspective, but what about if everywhere I logged in, I could then record and store the behavior or any booking data or any transactional data that keeps to accumulate value for me? There's no such thing. And that's what TravlrID is basically saying, that if you log in somewhere and you do something, you should be able to accumulate those insights and that value to you as an individual. And if you want to get personalized using a third party's AI, so TravlrID won't give you the AI, but they'll give the ability for you to give consent to an AI to access your data vault. You can then open up your whole vault or parts of your vault. What do you mean you log in and say, hey, I'm going to log into this airline's website and I consent to you seeing everything. And I want you to be hyper personalized for me and my family when I travel. And that's basically what we're saying, that the login should be login and storage. Combine the two, then manage the context. So I hope at a high level that's making a little bit of indications of what from a traveler's journey it could look like.
It is. And I wonder, do you think Web3 could be thought of as kind of, in any sense, a return to the original impulse of so-called Web 1? Do you think that this is kind of the fulfillment of the original ethos, or is it a shift in direction or a kind of a return to the foundational concept of the web? How do you see that?
Yeah, because I think the foundations of the internet were originally based on read-only, right? It was a one way. It was a read-only scenario, and then it became a read-write, and then now we're into, okay, it's a read-write, but now we need ownership, right? Now it's getting to the sheer amounts of data we're generating. Where is that data going to be stored? So the actual shift is less on the internet, and it's actually more to do with the system of record. So who is the master record is actually where the shift is happening, because in an AI world, who's storing all this data? I think for all the people that are listening and watching, a good exercise for you is to go to ChatGPT and say, can you tell me what you know about me? And I think you'll be startled, and it will give you a whole summary on everything it knows about you, right? And it's got context aware. Now, there's two things to that. One is, wouldn't that be super valuable if you get personalized based on everything it knows about you now, right? That's how do you securely share that? I'd be very nervous if someone got hold of my ChatGPT because of the things it could tell you about me. You can have very deep conversations about some concepts and some philosophical conversations about the universe. But the other conversation is, what if a third party was able to reverse engineer that as a bad actor and use that data for other purposes, right? So there's a twofold shift. And that goes back to why TravlrID exists, privacy first, and how do you build trusted data? So I think it's less of an evolution of the internet, because you're still going to have a DNS, you're still going to have the protocols that power the internet today for these agents to talk to each other, but the system of record is going to shift. And if I put that in a more simpler, non-techie way for folks that might be listening that are not from a tech background, every brand you work with today has a client relationship management software, a CRM or a Salesforce or HubSpot, whatever they're doing. Imagine you could talk to any brand CRM yourself. No matter how many brands you've connected to, I can't share the Marriott data, but I can verify that I've stayed at the Marriott 10 times. I can't tell you where, because that's Marriott's data, but I can give you persona behavioral data. So when I go, I look for personalization, I can talk to any CRM in the world that would say, Gee travels 50,000 miles a year. and either he takes 2 Ubers a week. He generally likes to take away once a week, or whatever the persona it starts to build on me. And I can talk to any CRM in the world. That means I become my own CRM, basically. And that's the power. Only then will you get hyper personalization, because I'm my own walking, talking CRM with a plugin.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I definitely, and I don't want to digress too much, but I definitely know, like, in terms of bad actors or hackers leveraging AI to dramatically improve their social engineering capability, if you will, definitely there. But going back to what you were saying, I just took a quick note because I wanted to ask you about the capability for AI agents, let's say TravlrID, from an implementation perspective. You might need to kind of describe it a little bit, but I'm curious to know, if I have a TravlrID profile, does it need to be trained? Do I need to give it access to, let's say, my Google, my Gmail, so that it can see all my Expedia bookings, my Airbnb confirmations, etc.? Should I give it access to my calendar so it knows, like, typically when I like to travel? Does it recognize kind of a pattern that I'd like to travel during the holidays or my birthday, certain anniversaries, etc.? So that's kind of question one in terms of the implementation. And then the second part to it is, I'm curious, right now, big tech, big travel, they own our data, if you will. We freely share our data with them. Will it get to a point where they will actually pay us for us to share our data, because they want to reach us, they want to personalize for us, and then they say, we'll give you some micro, I mean, maybe it's not monetary, it could be loyalty benefits and points, etc., but as some form of incentive for us to want to share our data, because at that point in the future, hopefully in the near future, we control our data, we own our data.
So multi-layers there. So I'll go in reverse order. So let's go back to the technology question first.
Yep.
So think about every profile, every vault has an MCP server, and you can simply plug in whatever AI you want. But the way we built our tech, it's actually a developer product. If I'm very honest with you, we built a developer product that any company can build on our profile stack.
Yeah. So can you just expand on what an MCP is?
Yes. So Anthropic, one of the big AI companies, developed a plugin style, like it's a MCP is a model context protocol, and apologies for the technical words, but basically all it is just a USB adapter, plug it into your data, and it allows in a structured, formatted way for you to talk to your data. So this USB is like plugging in a USB port into your data, and now all of a sudden you have a structured way to talk to your data, and that's what the MCP does. Today, there's no way for you then to invite an AI to talk to your data, because you can have data sitting in Dropbox in Google, but how do you allow any AI agent that's not part of that technology stack to talk to that data? Well, you need a USB port. You need a way for it to come in and out to talk to that data, and that's what the MCP enables. It's like a USB adapter, basically. So that's what that does. So what we did here is we realized that if we try to be the global AI service again, I'm once again pitching the story of everyone's AI is not good, you should use ours, and people become partner agnostic again, and that's not the open source mentality. We want to power travel, we don't want to own bookings, we don't want to do the AI agents that are doing all these recommendations. We want the folks that to train those supermodels, but allow them to talk to compliant AI profiles. And how do you do that? So that's where we said each vault can have a USB adapter. Could be my Marriott profile, could be my personal profile, could be my family profile, could be my business profile. You can handle all the different contexts, and it can switch the USB port can just switch between contexts. So what the beauty about that is, we're not pigeonholing people into, you must use this AI to be your personal AI agent. Actually, this is your personal data, and if bookings agent wants to talk to it, give it consent. You want to give this to a third party. As the data gets richer, you can revoke access to any of these other agents at any time that you're trying to offer you personalization, but you still need a way to handle that handshake. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually kind of racked my mind a little bit, because I've always kind of thought, like, in the future, we're going to have this singular profile that we're going to be able to control, which I thought that's a lot of work, because I'm going to have to, like, allow, deny whatever preferences and profile data that I have. But what you're saying is that we're most likely going to be moving to a world where it's a blend of the existing infrastructure of multiple profiles, but that there's going to be infrastructure where these profiles can be engaged by one or more AI agents.
Yes.
And then from that is where that holistic profile awareness of you to be able to do things like hyper personalization, for example. So it's not a single profile feature, it's a multi-profile feature, but structured enough where AI agents can engage with every single one of them.
And the user will talk through voice. My ultimate opinion is that they will just talk through voice. At the technical level, it's very complicated what we do, but then it's very proprietary. But we want to make it a developer product that talks to legacy APIs, allows any organization to modernize their profile stack. You can build these AI profiles into your technology and off you go. You could be a TMC, you could be an online booking tool, you could be a GDS, you could be anyone. You can build these profiles that become AI compliant and off you go. And depending on the use case, you bring your own model, you bring someone else's model. It's fully agnostic. So we want folks to build their use cases on top of the architecture, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So just clarifying that capability, it exists right now with TravlrID. So if I'm like a global brand or an airline and I say, hey, I want to get my customer profile ready for the agentic world, is that something they can just like, hey, let me go ahead and reach out to Gee and TravlrID and see how we can implement this?
So the short answer is we've got the developer product that's coming out later this year you don't even have to phone Gee to talk to him. You'll be able to run into the developer events to just run up a profile yourself. That's coming out later this year. We're already doing it in corporate travel today behind a paywall. We hashed out all the use cases and everything in business travel. So we're already doing that. So we're not doing it in the consumer side, but we are doing it in the corporate business travel today. And we're doing it with strategic travel partners.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Joe has a TMC background, so he can probably shine some additional color onto the value case or the use case and the value prop.
I'd be curious, Gee, how you find the reception among the TMC community, because the attitudes there to certain things vary TMC to TMC and even person to person within those TMCs. So to the extent you'd be willing to comment, how do you find the TMC reception to what you're talking about?
Much higher reception from online booking tools, if I'm very honest with you. TMCs are going through their own digital transformation. You also have to remember this is part of their business model. They're already charging for a profile stack today, right? What we're saying is to corporates, you can own the profile. You should own the profile and not third-party systems. And then you should be able to enrich that. So it's not plain sailing, but some of them are playing nice and some of them are being supportive. Some of them are reintegrated. There is mixed emotions from that, Joel. There is some that aren't playing nice, some that are playing nice. I think it's probably the short answer.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And from a TMC lens, I think a lot of them are looking at how they can sort of begin to streamline the operational side, the traveler support side, in a way that kind of blends technology with human expertise in the right way. I know you've thought a lot about empathy and how whether a human or AI empathy is rather key. Do you think there's a story for TMCs about how to get them to a world that's both efficient for them operationally and even financially, while still giving a level of traveler care? Because I think that might be somewhere in the ballpark of what would resonate with the TMC audience. Just curious, and tell me I'm wrong. Like maybe that's not what you're saying. Just curious how you see it.
And I think this comes back to my point earlier about mindset shift, right? If our lives depended on it, everyone would get along, right? And we'd move very fast and together. But at the moment, we're moving in silos and we're going very slow. So if we want to go far, we go together, right? So the problem we have is there are some folks that are still thinking about this is our domain and this is our universe and no one else can come into that. If any incumbent thinks that they can own the entire journey for a traveler, they're mistaken, because I have duty of care in corporate world, right? That is rich data for you to personalize risk alerts to me based on what contextual data do you do that on today. Most often enough, the emergency contact details aren't even up to date. So how do you reach the traveler if there's an issue? If I'm part of the LGBT community and I'm traveling in some part of the world and there's been a hate crime towards that community, are you able to personalize to me today? You're not, because you don't have the rich contextual data. Will you ever get that data as a TMC? Travelers are not very good, corporate travelers aren't very good at updating their data as it sits today. And if you're not adding any more value, why would the individual go then and make this enriched profile? The second part of that answer is we're very dependent on what we load in a profile today on what's the standard for a GDS profile. How many fields can you load into a GDS profile before it gets the central reservation system, and then it gets chopped again and chopped again. And by the time, bless Mike, by the time he gets out the PMS level, it's like, I've got nothing. Everyone chopped it. They mapped it. Surnames and first names and surnames. So all these things contribute and compound significantly. And in an AI agent world, if we follow that trend, it's a downward spiral and we're never going to get to the land that we're talking about. So we're either modernize their stack, or we go around it. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about all the other travel innovators that are doing similar things in this space.
I come back thinking about everything you're saying, Gee. I'm wondering whether part of the problem is mindset, because if reading between the lines, I feel like what you're hinting at least in my mind, is the need for somebody to think holistically and to sort of think about, it's a way too lofty a phrase, but almost the greater good of the industry as a whole. And actually, when Tim Berners-Lee gifted us the World Wide Web v, 0.0.0, whatever, that was a rather unselfish act. And to your earlier point about, you mentioned the idea of service. I almost wonder if we need a little bit more of an attitude of enabling, supporting. Sometimes in sports, you pass the ball and somebody else scores. Do we need a little bit of that kind of, dare I say, unselfish thinking where, for the good of the industry, we allow some foundational things to come in rather than everyone trying to kind of wrestle their own piece to the ground and look at just their little puzzle piece? And again, that's a hypothesis, so bat it down or take it away, if you will.
I firmly believe that. I think there are some folks that are trying to empower innovators or use cases. A lot of folks are trying to deploy AI in their products. I think there is a whole shift required in, is that going to be the interface? If you're talking about a glorified chatbot, is that the future? I can assure you it's not. So have we had a Elon Musk in travel? Have we had a Steve Jobs in travel? Have we had one of those pioneers that's come completely transform the travel industry? We haven't had that moment yet. Are there people with enough influence that could have that kind of effect? 100%. They do exist and they do fund these things. Then becomes a second tier problem. It's geographical. For people like me, I'm in the wrong part of the world for what I'm doing. But if I'm trying to build an infrastructure for travel, I should be in the US, where I have a higher chance and higher impact, higher visibility. I'm very fortunate to be here. But the people that are tracking new emerging tech are aware of me, but are people that are really in the core product roles in places where they're thinking about rewriting their profile stack, are they aware about how do you make it? You don't have to solve the AI profile compliant from or the context from. Someone else has done that. What you need to do is, how do I personalize better, make the better AI model, and offer a better servicing or a better booking experience? Because that still has to be done, but let somebody else do the belts and braces in a more modern world. So, there is and I think it will come. If it's not us, it'll be somebody else. And this profile piece is the foundation for context for everyone. So I think it will come one way or another. There are people that are already doing great initiatives. Some people are doing it in seamless check-in, seamless traveler journeys. So it's a matter of time, Joel. It's one of those things. I refer to science, Moore's law, as computing power speeds up, right? It's only a matter of time to see how fast AI innovation is moving. So I've already got the gray hairs, but by the time my whole head has gone gray completely, I'm pretty sure we'll be there. Or we'll already be there. We'll look back on this podcast and go, I remember that.
That's right. That's right. And the good news in terms of location, you're now in the coffee shop that is everywhere. So Travel Around the Block reaches to the ether and beyond. And so who knows who will listen and hear and reach out to you. So I think you're in the right place. Could you tell us a little bit about how you see the future, like 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Maybe you'll be ever so slightly grayer, as you just said, but what else will look different? Like, I think there's that saying that people overestimate near-term change and underestimate long-term change. And so if we dare to stretch our imagination a little bit, what might this industry look like 5 years from now? Let's say 3 Steve Jobses and 2 Elon Musk come along. Maybe you're even one of them. And what does that look like when their vision comes to fruition? What does that look like?
So I think in the near 3 years, I think regulatory demands are going to find its way into all the folks. Their hands are going to get forced to adopt things like what we're doing at TravlrID. There is simply no way you're going to be able to store access data. Their digital identity initiative is global. It runs doing digital ID now globally. It's no longer its infancy. Web3 is no longer its infancy. The technologies being used to underpin these things are already also being done. I talk a lot about AI outcomes, how you have to prove how you got to this. I did a piece on the AI pricing piece, which got picked up by BTN. And that's a good point of when you have AI doing pricing for you. There was a study by Wharton and the University of Hong Kong of how 5 trading bots were trading. And they're on completely different large language models, and they had no relationship whatsoever. And they're trying to trade on the volatility of the market. They start trading, and then they start to realize one of them started to act a bit silly and a bit stupid and start taking high risks and doing stupid things. Number 5 was very conservative, and number 3, and they all have different outcomes. And they started to slowly learn, even the stupid one, that if I act stupid and do too many crazy things in the market, it affects the price and then I lose. They all started to collude. without talking to each other. These machines have never talked to each other, but based on the triggers of how they do reinforcement learning and AI to teach it of when you do this, that's good. When you do this, that's bad. And then that's how they train the AI models behavior. These 5 models try to include a pricing on this all trade at the right price and we all win. And they never spoke to each other. And they could be completely different models. And then I started talking about, and I guess that's a podcast on its own, but I started to talk about, hold on, Delta's AI pricing. How are you personalizing this price? Because you are going against what in hotel we call rate parity, and then in airline, how are you doing this pricing? You need to track every action to how you got to the personalized price. And if there's a bias, because G is willing to pay more and you then price higher for me, that's not personalization. That's that's collusion. So coming back to your point, next 3 years, I think the shaping of the regulatory landscape is going to force a lot of the suppliers' hands to do certain things to make sure that they comply. So we'll start with all the suppliers, airlines, hotels. They're going to have to, right? Because now rate parity and all these things they've done so hard to make sure compliance is in place, have to do it in an agentic world. And then you've got all the look-to-book ratios and all these other complexities that come in distribution also have to be factored in. So the next 3 years, in my opinion, is going to shape all of that. And once that dust is settled all on that, I reckon in 5 years' time, we will be doing, you're simply going to talk to a voice and say, hey, do something for me. And off it goes and does all of this stuff because everyone's caught up. Everyone's on the same page. The foundations are caught up. The standards are caught up. Regulations caught up. So 5 years from now, I don't expect to be putting out expense forms. I expect Gee's arrived in Heathrow and Gee, attack these lectures based on all my preferences and accessibility, everything. I don't have to talk about these things anymore. They're going to be hidden. This orchestration is going to happen all behind the scenes. And I'm only notified if I need to be notified. Otherwise, everything else is being tracked on my behalf. So 3 years, foundations built. 5 years, I think we're going to see massive, massive innovation in global travel.
I love that.
And I love that. Love the word orchestration. I think it kind of gets at that vision really well. Let's say you're running a travel company anywhere in the ecosystem, tech, supplier, whatever the case. Where would you start moving toward that future? Like which leg of the centipede would you move first in terms of trying to be future ready from the point of view of one of those existing players?
I guess I'm biased. I go back to the profile. I mean, I joked about it recently in a post of if I wasn't doing profiles, I'd build an AI first, TMC completely. I would completely rewrite the whole stack. But then I got back to the same problem. I still need to fix the profile problem because if the profile is structured and it's clean and it's portable and it's consent based, then you have everything else that you want to do in an agentic world. So honest opinion and without self-promoting, forget about TravlrID. If you're not thinking about a rich profile for a traveler in some sort of fashion that goes beyond the standard data fields, you're going to miss the personalization opportunity.
Yeah. And would you say beyond personalization as a major value proposition for travel suppliers, I would assume that there is a lot of the privacy and security aspect to it because your data got leaked, sign up for these services to protect yourself, your emails on the dark web, etc. Social security number all over the place, credit card information all over the place, identity theft and so forth. Are we going to be able to get to a point where that's going to be highly unlikely or even eliminated because we're moving to a world where leveraging Web3 blockchain for data privacy and security?
Yes. And I think without giving too much away with what we're doing, ultimately, when you think of a massive database or a distributed database, those kind of conversations we could have a hard debate on. But if you are ultimately to get down to, imagine a database that's been compromised with 100 million profiles. If every individual had the lock and the key to their row and their column or their data, it doesn't matter who's penetrated that database. They don't have the key to open it. They might have got the database, but Mike's got the key to unlock the data in that database. So you might have taken it, but there's nothing you can do with it. It's encrypted. So how do you deal with that? Ultimately, again, going back to TravlrID is every individual needs to be in control of their data. So even if it does get compromised, cryptographically, you can't get it. And if I were to change access to the data, the people that are consented to access that data are still able to access the data. If you're a rogue actor, you're not going to have access. So that security part is probably the single most important part, principles that we've been built upon, that you want to be in a situation if the profile did get, in that scenario, if you are a profile in someone's database that's built on TravlrID and that gets compromised, they're going to get a hashed version of the data and there's no way for them to get that key unless Mike gives consent to have access to the keys to then open the lock.
Yeah.
And that's where we win, because there's no one else doing it that way. Everyone's treating their silo as the master database for the profile, and we're saying no. We're having Mike has got the key and the lock to the data everywhere that data has been accessed.
Yeah. I definitely won't be sharing my C phrases with you guys, but I mean, I thought, obviously when we talk about like AI agents, right, they need to have some type of identification. They need to have access to your profile or profiles. We see a lot of announcements in the world of crypto where AI agents are going to be able to transact with crypto. I think Coinbase about this time last year did one of the first demo of an AI agent accessing a digital wallet to be able to use, I think it was a stable coin, to make a purchase or even transact with another AI agent. So AI agents with another AI agents on your behalf, even being able to, because it's using crypto, they can use, microtransactions, etc. So I think that's going to be a super interesting space if we talk about like a real dedicated Mike Sung's personal travel agent that has access to my profile information, but also access to a digital wallet that I assign to it so that it could monitor 24/7, 365, let's say price changes. Let's say I put a limit order on a Hilton suite in Miami South Beach, and I said, only go ahead and confirm this booking for these dates if the price goes under a certain amount, and hopefully it hits, something like that. Well, yeah, I love the trader analogy as well. That's back when I used to do some day and swing trading in the crypto world, but especially using bots also, right? Because you got to whitelist it, you got to give it access to certain things. But I think that's going to be a super interesting space for travel to be able to catch up to some of the things that's being experimented and explored on the finance side.
So let that be food for thought. So, being the sci-fi nerd again, imagine you had a S&P 500 bot that says, hey, Mike, the invoice for Marriott is due in 30 days. Let's not pay that. Let's put it in the S&P for 30 days. I want to gain another $200 in interest before I have to pay that. I'm going to do that automatically for you. I'm going to pay for that. I'm going to transact that. I'm going to do that. Now I'll pay the Marriott. I made it 200. Can you imagine this is going to happen all autonomously? These things will happen, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This is like an arbitrage bot, right? Where it's, yeah, that's allowed. I think you just created like another product in your head. I don't know if that exists, but I would love to subscribe to that, where like it knows all the bills, etc. And then it's going to be able to say exactly to the example you use, right? I do this somewhat manually, but imagine you have $100 bill that's going to be due in 30 days. You put it into, I don't know, Coinbase USDC for that 4.5% yield. And then a day before, you have to put a reminder on your phone. Oh, exit this $100. You just accrue another $4.50 from the yield, but I'm going to go ahead and take that $100 and pay the bill. So that's a great idea, man.
Verified profiles, you need consent. You got to give the agent. You have to be the verified agent from the S&P.
Yeah,
it's going to be a marketplace where you're going to go like you do in all the tools you have today. You click. I like that one. I like that one. Yeah. Deploy.
I'm just gonna say, if anybody's listening to this podcast and is building this tool, please reach out and let us know, because I'd love to talk to you about it. And if you just heard this podcast and you're thinking about building this tool, reach out and let us know as well, because I don't know if this product exists in the market right now, but I would love to explore that a little bit more.
I'm going to blow your mind, Mike. I'm going to let you, I'll dig out the name, but there is a company that pays employees by the hour. So as they're working, and I'm like, those kind of models, we didn't talk too much about business model innovation, which is the key to unlocking a lot of this stuff. But, there are people that are breaking we'll pay the salary by the hour. Now, can you imagine if you're getting paid by the hour, by the minute as you're working? Like you don't have to wait to the end of the month, right? I could start arbitraging. My salary's coming in as I earn.
Yeah.
How awesome is that? So,
yeah,
business model innovation and travel is also going to completely. It's not just the technology. I think business model innovation, how money flows in travel, is about to be rewired too.
Absolutely. I mean, I did a little bit of a deep dive on stablecoins and how it impacts travel. And if you talk about all the inefficiencies and all the fees that gets added to it, yeah, huge. I mean, impact. Obviously, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Larry Fink from BlackRock talking about exactly to the point that you made. How cool would it be if your staff could be paid on an hourly basis, like literally the USDCs or whatever can just go into their digital wallet like every hour or something like that. Or I think the example that was used was Uber drivers, right? If Uber could pay their driver on an hourly basis in that frequency, their retention rate will probably be much higher,
Right.
something like that. Yeah.
And that's a great example of, they didn't start off about, hey, we're rewriting mobility's infrastructure for taxis. They didn't start with that. They started with, let's do some pilots in some cities. And now they've got a whole food economy on there. They've got so many different products they now built on the business models that's been unlocked. And I think that's what I'm bullish on for TravlrID, that what we may not bring the innovation, we'll bring the foundation on which people can build that on. But I'm super excited for what comes from the innovators that we'll be able to build on this, on these foundations that many folks in the space are building. And that's going to be super exciting.
To that point, Tom Lee of Fundstrat has talked about how the financial services world is sort of in its 1971 moment where Nixon goes off the gold standard, but what it led to regardless is about 15 to 20 years of pretty hardcore innovation. And he kind of sees the financial services industry as kind of in the foothills of a next wave of innovation that'll go for many years. And I'm curious if you use that as kind of just as a point of analogy. When you look at travel, do you think we're similarly in the foothills of a very interesting, fertile time for innovation, or is it just business as usual, another day in the industry? How do you kind of see that?
I do have mixed opinions on that one, to be honest. There's a David and Goliath moment definitely going to happen for some folks, for sure. So there's some folks that are going to try and cement their legacy for longer, but they also have enough money to actually go and transform. So it's going to be interesting. You know, if I'm honest with you, I don't know which way the cookie is going to crumble, because there are folks like myself, and there are a few startups I'm tracking that are with great interest in what they're doing. But will we get enough money to make the global change required? Because there's two things that are going to happen. All the demand's going to end up where they already are, and they're going to update their legacy infrastructure to facilitate, or they're not going to move fast enough, and then we're going to take the demand from where they are to where they should be, and then allow technology. So there's like two things that are going to play out. One is they catch up, or we move faster. There's only one of the two scenarios. So the innovators need to either speed up and get lots of money behind them and get the right technology partners to move fast with, or we're going to be stuck in, like you said. So we are really much at the bottom of that bell, where we're just about to get started. We're right at the beginning of this journey.
Yeah. And to that point, I'm curious what you see as sort of challenges or blockers to innovation in this particular space. It sounds like it's just always a walk through the park, and there are never any obstacles or never any challenges that you run into. But obviously, being facetious, what do you run into, and how does that look to you?
Well, the boxing gloves off anyway. So I just say as it is. There are naysayers that question what all the innovators are doing, and it's very easy to critique from far away. The cost of entrepreneurship for folks like us that spend a decade learning a craft, trying to do what we're trying to do to try and change an industry, comes at a high price. And it's very easy for someone with a very big, cushy corporate role to dismiss very easy in conversation with a potential client of, that's not what you need. That's not the innovation. That's not what you need. You know, they've got deep pockets and deep perspectives, and it's very easy for them to sway the status quo. I think and game theory says we have to stay at the table as long as possible. So I think that the hardest challenge is for the startups like us to stay relevant long enough to make the impact and have the change. And that's what game theory basically talks about, right? I think, yeah, so it's challenging those naysayers that are still sitting on the fence or a point of control still, is can we out them to have the impact we want to have? So we want to get past all these blockers. They are blockers, and we want to get around them. So I know for myself, I can talk for myself, I wouldn't have got into this if I didn't have thick skin. And it's not the first time I'm going to see naysayers. And if I was swayed by naysayers, I would not be doing what I'm doing. So for any other folks, entrepreneurs or fellow friends that are innovating in the space, you know, hang in there. You know, it's only a matter of time. So just the current mindset and some folks that sit in positions of power, Joel, is probably the issue.
So here's my follow-up, Gee, on that, right? Because obviously you're going to be biased when it comes to killer use cases for travel, leveraging Web3 technology and AI. Obviously, we're talking about DDID, traveler profiles, and so forth. Outside of that, what other killer use case are you seeing, or do you think will come to travel?
So, I mean, the personalization ones are obviously obvious in many ways. I still think there's a massive opportunity in messaging, real-time messaging. I think there is no way for me to let Mike know when you're sat in Seattle and about to get on a flight and message you things, regardless of technology, AI agent or whatever. Could be something significant as something to do with risk, or delay, or do you care? It could be anything, could be a special offer, could be anything, but how do you really do that contextual personalized messaging? Coming away from the profile for a second, and I know context might come from there, but no one's addressing the messaging part. And yes, agents, you can talk to agents, but agents respond to what I'm asking and they may go off and do something. Well, where's the proactive messaging to me the other way? Hey, G, hey, G, you're sat in London, you're about to get on a flight. Ain't going to happen. Do you want me to rebook the Uber for you with X supply? And then let me do that. Where's the other way? Where's the messaging coming to me and context aware that, hey, I know you're not with the family, so I can book you a rickshaw because you don't care about the risk because you want to let your hair down and you want to flow through London. So yeah, I think there's a real opportunity around messaging, and I've not seen anything there just yet.
I really love that because a few years ago I was talking about the AI technology and the Web3 technologies and the subcomponents. If you talk, let's say, for example, like smart contract or DDID, and etc. Basically, the way I was kind of hoping we would see more of is, and this is after COVID, so we've kind of experienced COVID, right? So we see, okay, there's major pain for suppliers when there's massive flight cancellations, right? So the experience that, for example, Southwest had when they had to manually go and do the refund or the cancellations. So I can see AI agents coming into play, leveraging smart contract. If a flight is delayed more than X amount of hours, automatically issue coupons or discounts or refunds, etc. Right? So messaging, I definitely think is going to be a core component to that, where you have an AI agent that's going to be able to say, hey, I recognize this is happening and this is the offer. And it's basically an interaction between me and the agent, and my agent, and the agent interacts with the travel suppliers to be able to eliminate that friction when there is a disruption to your travel. I love to see that, and I'd love to be able to see that it can even go further. For example, having a centralized travel profile where you have an agent that has visibility to not just your flight, maybe you have a rental car, maybe you have a hotel, maybe you have meetings that you need to go to, but your flight's now delayed by 6 hours. So it can automatically go and update your car rental reservation, sends a message to the hotel to say you're arriving late, maybe after midnight or something like that. And if you have a meeting, then it can automatically send a notification to the attendees that you're going to be late and so forth. Just basically like a personal agent and a travel agent that can do all of that for you and make sure that, and maybe even can go through the motion of rebooking as well.
Right. And I think that's super fascinating. So coming back to the messaging and tying that back into that. So you need an orchestration layer that does the data exchange, but wouldn't it be fascinating, as you know, if you move flights and they say, hey, you ordered a special meal and you need to do that 24 hours or 48 hours before your flight, whatever you have to do, right? But what about if you were connected to supply chain and they were the same carrier and they was then able to transfer the meal to your rebooked flight 3 hours later? Because if you move to a 3-hour flight now, there's no way the logistics chain would be able to pick up on, it'll be like, sorry, Mike, I can't do the special meal that you ordered because different flight, right? So you're talking about an AI agent that can do negotiation on your behalf. And I think that's super, and then we're going to get to that. And I think that's what's super fascinating, super interesting. But when supply chain starts doing that, the world is going to be completely changed, right? You talked about COVID. Imagine every vaccine and every metadata in every supply chain, right? You could then actually probably pinpoint which meal might have been the breakout for a certain pandemic. And then which other people that handle those meals were involved in that supply chain that could have affected the flight and then affected the bag handlers, and track and trace everything in a positive way. And AI could do those negotiations based on what has been given permission and come up with this whole modeling. I think we're only just scratching the surface. I mean, I could go on for hours about, if anyone's futuristic business model ideas, I'm more than happy to share more.
Well, Gee, by the way, I have to say, there's no way one podcast could do justice to all of your imagination. And so we'll definitely want to have you back. And I also have, for anyone out there thinking about whether to do a podcast, that's probably the best way to find out whether your co-host has ever been an extra in a major motion picture. So I didn't learn that till real time. So to learn about others, start a podcast, everyone. And Gee, we just want to say a huge thank you for the generosity of time and insight. I've learned a lot, and I think I'll dare assume Mike has as well. And as much as that, I think our audience has probably gleaned a huge amount from this conversation. So thanks for the inspiration. Thanks for the insights. And just a tremendous pleasure to have you here on Travel Around the Block. So thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, Gee. It's been a total pleasure. We always love doing this because we learn so much from people like you, especially today. Some of the, like, even the concept of individual versus multi-profile going forward, that really kind of shaped my thinking a little bit more as well. So with that said, in terms of wrapping things up, I know you mentioned a little bit about the future product as well. Is there anything that you're doing personally or, with TravlrID that you'd like to share with the audience? Anything that maybe you want to give a little bit of a sneak peek on?
We're fundraising right now. So any folks that are listening, that are interested in a futuristic travel tech business, by all means, please do get in touch with fundraising right now. So super excited about that. Any strategic partners that are interested in the developer product that we're building and some of those use cases for it. And if there's any nerds that want to just sci-fi geek out, nerd out, feel free to reach me out. Best place I'm usually active. I've got a Substack. I talk about all these concepts on my LinkedIn. So anyone that's interested to connect or just nerd out, by all means, I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, make sure to link up the Substack and your website as well, maybe your LinkedIn profile, anywhere they can reach you. But definitely happy to spread the word and hopefully move the needle a little bit in terms of the industry adoption of, they don't know where to go and where to get started. They now do, hopefully.
Appreciate it, guys.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gee. Well, have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for being here. It's a true pleasure.
Thanks for joining Joel and Mike for another episode of Travel Around the Block. If you have any questions or topics you would like to see discussed on the show, or if you'd like to be considered as a potential guest or sponsor, please reach out to us at hello@travelaroundtheblock.com. And of course, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Wishing you a wonderful day wherever you are around the block.